everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Cristachio, and I'm joined by two people talking about Jess Byard from the one-season show, and Mike White from the projection booth.
Hello.
Where's Mike White at? You here, Mike?
I'm right here.
Hello. We're talking about yet another foreign sci-fi film. We're talking about Obi-Oba, The End of Civilization.
Rok temu skończyła się atomowa wojna. Ludzie, którym udało się przeżyć, widząc nasze uniformy, okazywali obojętność, czasem pogardę. Głupcy. Kto wygrał tę wojnę? Burowie nie przychodzili. Nikt nie przychodził. Byliśmy sami, z czeredą niedobitków, której mieliśmy bronić. Bronić. Trzeba ich było zebrać, zorganizować, przewieźć gdzieś w bezpieczne miejsce osłonięte od promieniotwórczych opadów. Gdzieś, gdzie mieliby szansę przeczekać, przeżyć, rozpocząć wszystko od nowa. Takie miejsce istniało. Wysoko w górach stała budowla, której kopuła izolowała od wpływów atmosfery. Trzeba było tylko nakłonić tę ogłupiałą ciżbę, by schroniła się w tym azylu. I wtedy powstał program Arka. Arka, którą wymyśliliśmy po to, by ich ratować.
So before we talk about the film, Mike, I'm going to give you another chance to take a crack at now this Polish film's pronunciation.
Oh, that wasn't the pronunciation?
Oh,
that wasn't the real thing?
I don't know. Do you know how to say The End of Civilization in Polish?
Obi-Oba Konieczek. Oh, Jesus.
Hey, look at all those Y's and I's
Wow.
and J's.
Si Wilizachi?
So many dots.
Sounds like you were just like some sort of Italian, Japanese, Spanish. just came out of your mouth.
Just going for it. I think it's like Konchek Siwiljak. Sure. Could be right. Could be wrong. I'm not Polish.
There's a lot of Polish people in Cleveland, but I'm not going there.
It's The End of Civilization for Obi-Obas. So we're going to talk about Obi-Oba. It is directed and written by Piotr Szulkin. It stars Jerzy Stuter as Soft, a main character who I don't even think at any point is given a name, but I guess apparently he was given a name, unbeknownst to me.
I saw that name several times, and I was just like...
he was...
Yeah, but I didn't realize that was his name.
Did you just think that they were saying soft at the end of every sentence?
Soft. What light through yonder window breaks?
Exit pursued by a bear.
Soft.
So look, okay, first off, fuck you guys. Secondly, Mike, I'm going to ask you the same question I always ask you during Mike White March. Why did you pick this movie?
This is one... So, last year...
Explain yourself!
Last year I had a couple podcasters on the show, on the projection booth, and I did what I called the Apocalypse Quartet. There were 4 films, and the first one was Caught in the Eye of the Storm, and then there was Apocalypse, Tribulation, and Revelation, and they were these... if you couldn't tell by the names, there were these Rapture films. And when I got these folks on, they were like, oh, we thought you meant these Schultzkin movies. So I said, well, they have been sitting on my shelf for years and years. Maybe I should actually watch these. And I don't know why I chose Obi-Oba, but I feel a little bad because I saw War of the Worlds Next Century, and I really enjoyed it. And then I saw this one, I was like, this is kind of weak sauce.
You know, you saying I watched this one and it was great, and we watched this one it was bad. It reminds me of all the times I've gone and done things, and people were like, "Oh yeah, it was just last week we were doing it. It was great." It's like, "Oh great, well that's not how it is now."
Yeah, should have been here last night.
Yeah.
Last night was free beer and trivia, and you could get appetizers and sliders. It was fantastic. Tonight, you get a piece of wet sand.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck? Like this, boy, it's like, wow, I wish I was there last night. So, Jess, I am curious. What do you think of Obi-Oba? Or Obi-Oba?
Obi-Oba, which is how I've been pronouncing it in my head.
Also, it's like telling all of your friends about it you're watching.
Yes, all of my friends.
I'm watching this film. It's
you know
great.
what, though? I did. You know who my friends are. I told them. They appreciate it.
I do know who your friends are, but I'm not sure your friends would be
You are
going
one
out
of them,
to-
so.
That's true.
So I will be perfectly willing to admit that Polish cinema in general is a giant blind spot for me. It was funny because I was talking to my husband while I was watching this movie just about, because we just recently watched Parasite a month or so ago, and I was just remarking that it was funny to me because I was more privy to like the cultural nuances peppered throughout that movie than I was with this, because I'm just so like blank when it comes to sort of Eastern European cinema in general. Therefore, I did not watch what the last film that you guys talked about, so I can't compare it to this or this to that. But I honestly, I did not hate this movie. I thought that it honestly had a lot of really interesting parts to me. It had a lot of really unsettling parts to me that I personally liked. I like when a movie can kind of get under my skin in that way, and I think this movie does exceptionally well in that in certain parts. It drags, yes. There are moments where I'm like, all right, can we just move on? But which is funny to say for a movie that's only an hour and 25 minutes. But once I'm in it, though, like once they get me back, I'm back, and I did. So I wouldn't say that, you know, I loved this movie, but being that this is my first like kind of introduction into this world of film, I liked what I see, and I would like to see, you know, more and better, obviously. But no, I appreciate this movie for what it is. I think that it could have been better in a lot of aspects. There were some movies that I sort of was likening it to in my head. In particular, Dark City. I don't know if either of you have seen it. Mike White, you probably have. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I was getting a lot of Dark City vibes on this, which is also a sort of, it's a dystopian future, but noir and not Polish. But yeah, no, I thought that it was interesting, and I don't think it was an hour and 25 minutes, ill spent.
Christopher.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm glad that some of us didn't find it to be an hour and a half, not well spent. Because I found it to be without purpose, spinning its wheels, and ultimately at the end of the film trying to have a message that it didn't earn. It didn't earn the message it's trying to have. It kind of seems like it was trying to do way too much, or I don't know if it was trying to do way too much or not enough. Like, I keep kicking around in my head, like, was it not doing enough? And that's why? Or was it doing too much and it just didn't know how to do any of what it was trying to do? Like, I don't know where I come down on that. Because I could make an argument for either way, but I feel like the film failed for me because if I have to come down on the side, I'm going to say it just didn't know how to execute what it was trying to do very well. Does that make sense? Maybe not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, I can see where you're coming from in that it is a couple different types of movie, in that it's this post-apocalyptic future, and it's set in this world that is essentially this bunker that is surrounded by this dome that is collapsing in this post-apocalyptic future. And supposedly outside the dome is this radioactive ice field, basically. And at the beginning, and all throughout the movie, really, but at the beginning specifically, we're told that by our main character, sort of in some VO narration, that after whatever disaster it was that happened, and they were all having to live like this to sort of calm the, masses and sort of, bolster them into an organized group. They made up this, myth that this ark was all going to come save them and take them to some, sanctuary place that is all safe. Great, fine. So, we have that sci-fi movie aspect, post-apocalyptic. We also have the sort of like day in the life where it's a really introspective movie that we are just following this main character soft. And I think that maybe Chris, maybe you had this issue, is that Soft is really the only not crazy person we meet in this movie. Uh-huh. Aside from maybe his girlfriend, or whatever she is, the lady he likes. But everybody else in this movie is really over the top or just really far gone. I did really like seeing everybody's little... Because as he's going around... He's basically tasked with finding these leaflets of propaganda or whatever that someone is passing out. And in that action, we get to see these various people in this bunker, and everyone has their own sort of plan or feeling, idea of what the Ark is. Some of them think it's a boat, some of them think it's a flying, aircraft. It's whatever, but everybody has their own plan, their own... I don't know. I liked peering into the little corners of this world. I honestly would have liked to spend more time amongst the people rather than just with this guy, Soft. Because he's not a hugely compelling protagonist. Like, he is really just walking through this movie and stuff is happening around him. There's not a lot of motivation to his action until he finally gains some, a glimmer of hope, which is dashed, and it's coming. But I don't know. I can see what you mean in that I think that there's a lot of elements that they wanted to explore, but I don't think they fully explored some of them, or they didn't push them as far as they could have. Although, you know what? How far could they push them? This was making movies in communist Poland.
Right.
Well,
there's a lot of restrictions happening here.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that I think is the bigger point. Is
Oh yeah, we have to take into account that this was made in 1985 in Poland. Like, this is not.
Here's the thing about that, though. From a Dead Man's Letters is so good, and it was made. What, Mike? Was it made in 75 or 85?
No, it was more 85. Yeah.
Okay, and that movie is so good, and it was made in communist Ukraine and Russia, and I have a hard time giving this film a pass when Dead Man's Letters was so good.
Oh, I'm not giving it a pass, but I'm saying that I think that, and I haven't seen Dead Man's Letters, so I can't speak to that. But in the case of this particular filmmaker, the way that communist communist Poland and everything that was affecting him particularly, I think he just takes more of the... Everything's very drab and uniform. Like, I was talking
color palette for this movie is so drained out. I mean, I'm not sure when they started doing this type of flashing for the film stuff, but it just has that look that you see all the time now, where everything looks blue and green and just completely drained out of any sort of warm colors.
Very post-apocalyptic-y.
Very post-apocalyptic, very on the Silver Globe, just it has a very good look to it, and it just makes everything look so drab and awful.
Oh, and miserable.
Oh, yeah. And you see those people that are like huddled in hallways and, yeah,
all the people who are just waiting to die or have just given up and gone down to die. But I was talking to my husband, and I'm a huge Italian horror movie and giallo fan, and it's just funny to watch just how different the styles of filmmaking are, because, even in an Italian movie where this, a beautiful model can be murdered, just absolutely horrifically, brutally murdered, but it looks awesome when it happens. Everything in this movie looks just gross and grimy and cold and sterile, which obviously it's supposed to. And I think that's also part of why I did, I was in this movie, because I felt that environment. I felt the immersion. I felt that just kind of awfulness. And for me, what this movie excels at is it excels at being more of I hesitate to say like a horror, like a sci-fi horror, because it's not either of those at all, like explicitly. But this movie just works as a horror adjacent film for me, because it's really unsettling. And I think that a lot of it is that I can just feel like the oppressive energy that was happening, like, and had been happening forever. And I don't know, it radiates out of this. And again, I don't have any experience watching any other movies, fitting into this category, so I have nothing to compare it with. But I don't think that, I think that it does have its own, it's creating its own atmosphere and its own flat look on purpose. I think that that is all intentional, and I think that it works.
Well, it's like this bureaucratic nightmare, and this whole
right.
Soft having to come up with this lie and sell the lie, and the way that the people take the lie and interpret it in different ways. Like you were talking about the people who worship the Ark, the people that don't believe in the Ark, and just all of these things, and him having to sell it constantly. And then those flyers that are coming up that are undermining his entire existence. It kind of reminds me of like, it's almost like Terry Gilliam directing a J.G. Ballard book or something. I was reminded a little bit of like High Rise meets, 12 Monkeys kind of,
Yeah.
So it's that, with Brazil, we know that Gilliam loves to make fun of bureaucracy, and this isn't that web of bureaucracy, but it has that, the inanity of it, and just Soft running around and trying to keep all of these plates spinning at the same time.
Oh, yeah, he's talking, like, when he's talking to, I honestly don't know what anybody else's name in this movie, if they ever
They all
actually
have
said
weird
it.
names, like Millionaire or Well-Kept,
or
these
Bald Head.
things.
I remember Bald Head. But,
we've
no,
gone
Soft
beyond names now.
Soft is talking to some guy, and the guy's like, his quote is, they invented these jobs to keep us busy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, for me, this movie also felt pretty relevant. Not obviously like so heavy-handed, like, nothing like that is happening here, obviously. But just the sort of status quo, day-to-day, buy this lie, even though there's all of this information contrary to what it's telling you, you're still going to buy it because this is the system that's feeding it to you, and that's the system you trust. And I don't know, that just kind of, it hit me as a relevant, I don't know, this Polish movie from 1985 just resonated with me, I guess, in that sort of political way, just in that.
Some of these ideas never go out of style.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's like, just, yep, work your shitty job and do what you're told to maintain your status of living that we've allowed you to have.
Yeah, you're like a rat in a maze, and that's very much what Soft is this whole, like, I have to keep going, I have to keep going, I have to keep doing this thing in order to keep this stuff moving.
Yeah, he's on a constant fetch quest.
Oh, yeah. Really well put.
Like, he's just from room to place that, and honestly, I felt, especially for a movie that does drag, I do give it that, for sure, as a downside. But I liked the cinematography in this movie. That's much more fluid, and there's a lot more movement, because this movie could have been exponentially more boring in aspects if it were just fucking static shots, like just wides and close-ups and mediums, and if it weren't, because like you said, he's constantly moving almost. Like, there's a few parts where he stops and he's talking to somebody or he's sitting down, But he's not there for very long. He's always moving, and there's a lot of times where he's talking to somebody and the camera's either handheld or on a steady cam, probably on a steady, and just sort of like going around him and the other person as they talk instead of just following straight behind or following straight ahead. You know, it's just, I thought that it at least created a more interesting visual aesthetic to keep, you know, your eyes kind of moving around.
I think one problem of this film, perhaps, is that there's no real clear antagonist, that the antagonist is the system more than anything. Like,
right. There's no real conflict.
Right. With War of the World, at least you had the Martians who were bad, but then you also had the main character's fellow humans who were basically going along with the Martians and represented the status quo that way. And, you know, I like that film better because there were more clear characters that were drawn, and you felt more compelled by your main protagonist. This one, without those lines, I think it was a little tougher to kind of get behind some of it. I am curious, Jess, what was your take on the end? I couldn't really figure out what was going on with the end of this film. I was reminded, of course, of Waterworld when this balloon showed up, but
I interpreted it in probably the more obvious bleak way, in that, like, he died essentially, in that, because I think his girl, because we never see her again, do we? His half love interest throughout this movie.
I don't think so.
And the thing is when I was watching it, and I didn't pause it to see, but I thought I saw, like, when he's going out at the end, when the hole opens and everybody starts running out into this massive white light, thinking of, you know, whatever they think it is. I thought that I saw in the very, 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 very back in the dark that she was just kind of standing there, but she looked really, like, kind of statuesque. And so I was like, maybe she's dead. And then when he goes out and sees that balloon and she's up there and he goes up and then he looks down and sees himself, I think that's just him. You know, that would be the ideal. That was his hope. That was his, and maybe, you know, everybody, like I said, everybody in this movie, we get to see their own individual plan or their own individual thought as to what, you know, they think the arc is going to be like. And throughout the whole movie, we're following him around, and he knows that the arc is not true because he was part of the, you know, propaganda that created the lie. But in a world that is so hopeless, and being a human, throughout, we were told, we're not really given insight into what his hope is. We're kind of like, he's kind of viewed as just this cynic who you would think that doesn't really have any kind of hope. But I think that balloon sort of represents maybe the little tiny plan that he had for himself deep inside, just in case something came to rescue them. That's how I kind of took it.
Okay, I can totally see that.
But can we talk about the dead ladies in the freezer? Because that was my fucking favorite scene in this whole movie. the Garden of Eden, or wherever he took it. So, I don't know what this character's name was either. Was he the millionaire?
He could have been.
No, it's the man in freezer.
Oh, man in freezer.
That's literally the character's name.
Oh, okay. Well, there you
Christoph Marjax plays man in freezer.
Yep. Yeah, so this is just another man that Soft meets, and this man really, really likes Soft and admires him, and the whole time he's trying to get him to go in his, like, ice bunker, and I'm like, don't do that, he's gonna murder you. And he goes down there, and I really liked the whole execution of this scene and this reveal, because I liked that they didn't show you what was happening right away, because the shot kind of follows Soft and this dude as they're walking, and you're looking at them from the side, and they're looking into a case, but you can't see what's in the case. And you see on Soft's face when he looks at it, there's something fucked up in there, but you don't know what it is. And once they finally do kind of like pan around, you see that this man has abducted some women that he took a liking to and froze them. I hope he killed them before, but it didn't look like it. It looks like he froze them to death, and just assumed that they would be unfrozen when the arc came. And yeah, I don't know. That scene was I thought it was great. I thought it was just Because, yeah, you got to think that if you're living in this sort of dystopian world where you are all confined into this space, you're going to be confined with some fucking crazy-ass people. I do kind of like that Soft does. It's really the only active decision he makes in the whole movie, because everything else is kind of, like, thrust upon him, and I think that that also is a problem with the movie. Like you said, like we were kind of talking about, there's no motivation. There's no reason until the very end when he starts to get a glimmer of hope that there could be salvation. There's no reason he should be doing this, or like has to really, or is compelled to. He just is doing it because that's what the movie needs him to do, essentially. But the only active, like real active decision he makes throughout most of the movie is to lock that man in his freezer and let him die in there. And I mean, I was fine with it. I just really liked that whole scene and execution and everything about it. That was the eye of the duck for me.
Yeah, I do really like what Szulkin is doing in these, and that is definitely why I want to see more of this work. Just because after only seeing these two films, I'm like, okay, yeah, bring on the other two in the Apocalypse Quartet. I know he did an adaptation of Per Ubu. I think that was his last film. I'm just like, yeah, sure. I'll watch anything else that you want to show me, because I think you've got some really good things to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about this. Like, I wouldn't, just recommend it to anybody, obviously, and I wouldn't say that this is, obviously, it's not a fantastic film, but it is intriguing enough and just engaging enough for me to want to see more of this director's and writer's work.
And meanwhile, Chris wasn't a fan, which is understandable. Like you were saying, I wouldn't recommend this around.
Oh, no, I would. I recommended this only to one person, and I know that they will get some sort of appreciation out of it.
I mean, I liked it stylistically. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a bad film to look at, but I think, again, it comes back to, for me, I want an engaging story, and I wasn't engaged. And it has nothing to do with it being subtitled. It has nothing to do with it being a foreign film.
I think this is a very message-driven movie, more so than a story-driven movie, where it is just kind of like reflecting on, maybe not even a message-driven, just like a reflection more so than anything else. And I do think that's definitely a total, like, valid issue with the movie. And it's also, this isn't a movie that has a whole lot of rewatchability for me either. Like, there's a lot of movies that I do really enjoy upon watching, but I never probably will revisit them again because, yeah, there has to be some kind of also entertainment factor or story factor that hooks me, some kind of emotional thing that I can latch onto that would want to bring me back to something time and time again. There's nothing, like, emotionally charging or super entertaining about this movie. I think that it's just, if you are a person who just likes movies and likes, who really, really likes various aspects of the film world, and you just want to, like, jump in somewhere, I think you guys probably do worse than this. You can do a hell of a lot more complicated than this, I think. Because then you get, like, fucking super convoluted with some of them, but
I just, for me, what this all comes back to is just, I'm holding Dead Man's Letters on such a pedestal, and maybe I shouldn't, but Dead Man's Letters was so good.
Is that the one you watched before?
Technically,
we are in a time loop right now. We're in a time loop. We watched it next week.
We watched it. Cool. We've watched it already.
Far out.
Weird, man. we have future tech here at the Culture Cast. You just don't know about
we hit 88 miles an hour.
Studios.
We really saw some shit.
Yeah. But the problem that I come back to with this film is the protagonist seems to be sleepwalking through the film. I get that he's, like, being tasked with this essentially unwinnable position of, oh yeah, by the way, you're making up this and continuing to propagate this lie to people that without the lie would all be revolting and going insane and wanting to die. And you're perpetrating this lie. I mean, I understand the whole subtext. I get it. I think for me, it just comes back to I wanted I wanted a more clearly defined protagonist, and I did want some kind of antagonist other than the internal struggle.
The man.
But it's not even a man, right? It's just like...
Man.
Yeah,
Is
she's
it
talking about the
bald-headed
man. Yeah,
Oh.
she's talking about the man with a capital M.
Oh.
The man.
Yeah.
The bald man.
The system that makes it all go. I guess
Soft's
the bald
boss,
man is
as he's
essentially
called.
acts as the
Man.
man or the antagonist. It's just that he never leaves his office or does anything at all that would become threatening other than being a weirdo.
I mean, and there's
yeah.
a lot of bleed over from Dead Man's Letters in this. Just like
yeah.
there was a lot of bleed over from Dead Man's Letters in The Secret of Steel City. But I just think these movies don't do that as well. And the crazy thing is, this movie and Dead Man's Letters are essentially addressing the same thing, which is what happens after civilization is over. And this is going at it from a different direction.
I'll have to check
And
that one out.
I think it's an inherently less interesting direction, but it could have been done in a way that made it interesting. I just don't think they nailed it. Because if like the whole movie is just how does this guy get around the fact that he has been perpetrating a lie about an ark that was coming to save people, I wanted more.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that.
Yeah. And wanting more is not a bad thing, but when the movie doesn't give you very much to begin with, it is a bad thing. You know, it's just, yeah, it's not that I didn't just want more, I didn't think the film gave me anything to begin with, so. But, I'll tell you what, it's still nice to look at, which is a good thing. Lots of blue. So blue, in fact.
Shot entirely in Blue Hour.
Yeah, shot with that blue gel, just slammed over the
Just
camera.
over every light.
Kind of what it feels like, because it is, if it is anything, it is a
Go
blue
straight
film.
into a Saw movie after this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, good lord, the amount of blue is just, I mean, if you go on IMDb and look at photos from the film, they're all blue. Like, the shade of blue that they are using is very, very, very distinct. Very interesting.
Well, not everybody's wearing, like, gray clothing, too.
Yeah. And or, like, covered in filth.
Yeah.
Aside from, like, his girlfriend who's in red.
She looks like she's, like, walked out of some fitness center and on
Yeah,
this movie.
I don't know what was going on
I mean,
with
that character is almost right there, too, in that War of the Worlds film. I mean, this blonde with the red dress, there is a character exactly like her in War of
Interesting.
the Worlds. I'm very curious to see Gaga and the Golem to see if there's a similar character in those two as well.
I have to ask Mike a serious question, because you did program this month. Why are we not doing any Zawalski films?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm doing 2 of his films for Polish month for the projection booth.
Sure.
So, and then I don't know what I would subject you to, Chris.
I mean, I've seen Possession. That was the first podcast we ever did.
Possession is just so good. And
It is
then,
wild.
I mean, I talked about on the Silver Globe before. I don't know if I'm ready to ever go back to that. I mean, it's a fucking fantastic film, but it kind of melted my brain a little bit.
Why? That good or that weird?
Yes.
Okay, moving on.
Are you doing any Tarkovsky this year? Or this month?
We did Tarkovsky adjacent.
Yeah.
Dead Man's Letters is pretty much Tarkovsky.
I mean, yeah, he studied under Tarkovsky, and but yeah, I mean, I've only talked about Solaris and Stalker on the projection booth. I haven't gone into like The Mirror or Andrei Rublev or any of those yet.
I wouldn't have said no if you had wanted to do the Possession. Because
I wouldn't have said no either.
yeah, I mean, because I have only watched it once, and that was
It's so good. Oh,
well,
wow.
you've never seen it.
I know.
That is legit the first episode of the Culture Cast. I am not advocating anyone go and hunt it down because it is rough, and by rough I mean should be deleted from history. And you know, if we ever did it again, I would delete it. But yeah, Possession is wild.
You guys should do that. It is.
I would gladly.
It's such a fantastic film.
It is a mind fuck. There's so much weird shit going on in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh God! It makes me wish we
performances
had
in that
watched
movie.
that because there would be so much to talk about.
Yeah, that's true.
Isabel and Johnny alone is insane, and then couple that with Sam Neill
And Sam Neill's clone.
oh my! And then the squid monster. God,
Fucking, what was that guy's name? Heinrich, the guy that she ends up boning. And,
Yeah.
he's got that karate going on.
Possession is just a. Possession is one of those movies where it was the first movie I did for the Culture Cast, and it was like just throwing myself headfirst into the deep end. I mean, like, this is. I don't want to just cover bullshit on this podcast. I want to cover stuff like this. Like, I didn't really like this film too much, but this, and Mike knows this. This is the one thing I really appreciate about Mike, and and a lot of other folks who program movies, Jess, Mike Wallace included, Father Malone as we call him. You guys push me outside of my comfort zone, but I will give Mike credit. He pushes me farther outside of my comfort zone than anyone else.
Farther than Moulin Rouge.
Okay. That was just a movie I hadn't seen. But you tell mainstream folks about Moulin Rouge, they're going to know what you're talking about. If you told someone you watch this movie, they'd be like, I literally have
absolutely.
no fucking clue.
They would ask you to say the title again.
Yeah, Oba. Yeah, it's not a Beatles song. It is a Polish foreign sci-fi film. I will tell you this much though. This film, I would put it squarely in the sci-fi genre.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Unlike Secret of the Steel City.
Right.
Which was like fantastical sci-fi. Oh my. Like that kind of like, I wouldn't say high concept sci-fi because it's Jules Verne, but like this is very much like right in the wheelhouse of like sci-fi. This is a pretty close like theme and look wise to Dead Man's Letters. Except for Dead Man's Letters does so much more with so much less. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, I won't disagree.
Yeah. What I'm saying here is that you should be looking forward to our Culture Cast on Dead Man's Letters. I brought it up like 5 times now in the last 2 podcasts. So.
There's a Reddit thread about this movie.
It's a movie. Have you guys seen it? Leave.
It's a short one.
All of 2 posts.
No, it was like 6. Actually, they recommended the other movie you and I are going to talk about, where I'm going to be on for, The Visitor in the Museum, which I picked solely because it sounded like the title of a Twilight Zone episode.
Nice.
Which also, you know what? This movie could be like a lesser Twilight Zone episode, I think.
I can see that.
Like, especially the end, where it's just like, what? Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's another Lupashansky, so hopefully it's as good for Chris as Letters from a Dead Man. Yeah.
I will tell you that on IMDb, we are once again confronted with people going, a true classic, absolute must-see. Whoa.
On every movie.
Whoa. Well, no, because we were talking about on Secret of a Steel City, the idea of, like, did we watch the same movie? And I come back to it on this one. Did I watch the same movie that this person did? Because, boy, they're 9 out of 10. They're very adamant that this is a film worth watching.
Well, you got to really...
9 out of 10's a little steep.
Yeah. People who go on the IMDb, their go-to... trash it or to loud it.
It's true. It's like Yelp or anything else, right? There's no middle ground. No one ever writes a middle of the road review for restaurants or movies. It's this movie's great or this movie's shit.
Right. There is no in between.
The other thing, and this I think is just a product of how I was watching it. This film was really poorly translated. The subtitles left something to be desired.
Yeah, I don't speak Polish, so I really wasn't bothered.
Get out of here. You know what I meant. Don't sass me. I don't speak Polish. I don't speak Polish either.
As somebody who watched a lot of Hong Kong films, I can do with English. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I watched a Chinese puppet drama with Maggie with no subtitles at all.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
To be fair, I watch movies with my eyes closed and pretend like I know what's going on. So both of y'all...
That is just called... audio analyzing.
That's called being an asshole. And that is the circle and sphere with which I operate. What would you give this film out of 5, Jess?
I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5.
Whoa. Whoa.
That's usually
Mike.
where I sit middle of the road.
Yeah, middle of the road. Yeah, that's fair. What about you, Mike White?
Yeah, I'd probably do the same.
Yeah, give it like a 2. Mm-hmm. Didn't knock my socks off.
Hate it.
I didn't hate it. I mean, come on. It takes a lot to push me into this, like, I hated it. I can't remember the last movie I hated. Was Kuso the last movie that I hated? I didn't like Moulin Rouge.
Yeah, but I think you gave Kuso, no stars.
I think I gave Kuso a 0.
Yeah.
Which one is Kuso?
Well, Mike, if you're looking for movies to do on the projection booth, Chris Statue September has not been taken yet. And it's not Chris Statue September. And you know what the subtitle should be? Have fun. Kuso is directed by Flying Lotus, who is a hip-hop artist.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, the last movie I saw directed by a hip-hop artist was The Man with the Iron Fists, and I think I lasted 20 minutes.
Okay, Mike, this movie doesn't have The Man with the Iron Fist. I'm going to let Jess explain it.
So this movie also, because in addition to Flying Lotus, music is composed by Aphex Twins.
Oh, I love Aphex.
And screenplays also has a credit for David Firth, which I don't know if you're familiar with the internet cartoon or the internet animation Salad Fingers.
I thought you were going to stop at. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the internet, Mike.
I've never heard of this internet thing.
What is this webs you speak of? Like a spider?
I don't know. We watched it for Body Horror Month, and I guess that it applies to body horror, but it's just an excessive use of
gore,
sexual body fluids.
Wow.
There is a point where a man fucks a sentient boil.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why am I so intrigued by this?
I mean, I can see why you would be. And I'm just saying, you were
because we were too.
disappointed.
I mean, Jess and I were talking about it before we did the podcast, and we are like, "This sounds interesting." And then it was like, imagine someone is telling you a joke for like an hour, and then they get to the punchline,
and they think it's really funny.
Yeah, and they get to the punchline, and you're just like, "That's it. That is that movie in a nutshell."
Wow.
It has Tim Heidecker in it too. Like, there's a part where a woman's like eating concrete or some shit. Like.
That part bothered me, actually.
I think a lot of the movie bothered me. Oh, yeah, wait. What about the part... Oh, my God, we didn't even mention the part where that thing comes out of George Clinton's asshole.
Oh, yeah, George Clinton's in it. I forgot.
And like a bug comes out of his butthole.
Yep.
Wow.
Sure does.
Mike, this seems like... this seems... Okay, you know what, here.
We went from talking about Polish cinema to this.
To what is ostensibly garbage cinema. Do me a favor. Do this for the projection booth and invite Sam, Heather, and Kat Ellinger.
Oh, God.
and just watch as no one ever guests on your podcast again. Because I felt uncomfortable watching it as a man, and if I were a woman, I would feel even more uncomfortable, and if I were a person who didn't know anything about movies and I was watching it, I would probably have turned it off before it even started. Yeah, it's...
How do I get a copy of this? Do I need to buy the Blu-ray?
It's on Shudder.
It's on Shudder. It's a Shudder. It's a Shudder exclusive.
I need to dig up your login information, Chris.
Was it on my Plex?
Yeah, because I think so.
Yeah, I think
not.
Yeah, Mike, yeah. I will make this movie available to you, and you are gonna message me and be like, "Wow."
It's gonna take me a little while to watch it. Have you seen Final Flesh?
No.
Okay, I'll have to rip that and send it to you guys. That was a movie that was written by... I can't remember if they worked for Tim and Eric or South Park, but it was basically two writers, and they found this service where you could write your fantasies to, and it wasn't like porn stars, but they were porn performers, write your fantasies, and they would have to perform them exactly the way that they were written, because, if like you say the wrong word or do the wrong thing, it might ruin your fantasy, your fetish. So they wrote this incredibly crazy script and divvied it up into like little segments and sent it off to all these different companies, and they got back all these pieces and put it all together and made this movie Final Flesh.
That sounds pretty interesting.
Wild. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like Kuso. Like, you know this, Mike, I have no problem with films that are full of like non sequiturs and bizarre humor. My favorite movie is filled with non sequiturs and bizarre humor. But there's got to be a semblance of set dressing of a plot. And Kuso has none of it. Like, it is just...
No, it's like you're switching like the channel on TV, but every station is gross.
It even has... The film even has slam poetry. Like...
Oh, good Lord. Oh.
Like, the film opens with slam poetry. Like,
that's a hot button for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I'm getting at here. When I'm talking about, like, a film that, like, I have a visceral negative reaction to, Jess and I have brought up Kuso.
I was really mad about that movie.
We have brought up Kuso so many times in just how bad it was.
It's the bar.
Yeah,
it's the lowest bar we have.
Yeah, it is the dumpster... Bottom of the dumpster. It is the liquids that have leaked out of the dumpster that are pooling beneath it of films. And that, I don't think, unless we watch something that is truly horrendous, will ever change. So what we're saying is, you may like it.
Okay.
And you may like this.
And you may...
But if you are a person
may like Obi Oba more.
I don't know if you can like Kuso and Obi Oba. I think... Maybe those are two different people. I don't know. You can dislike both, though.
I will say, though, that Possession is a weird movie, and I'm kind of shocked we didn't do it.
Oh, I wanted to see it for a long time. I've just honestly, and I'm not usually this way with movies, in that, like, I don't want to watch it until I can watch it on, like, the best quality I can, but I really just want to buy the Blu-ray and watch it that way, because I want to see all of it in crystal clear, uninterrupted.
Oh, yeah.
Insanity.
I think when I originally did it in 2014, there wasn't a Blu-ray of it.
There is now. I just haven't bought it. I should actually see how much it is now.
It's probably Criterion.
I mean, that's fine.
Vinegar Strokes or whatever.
Vinegar Syndrome?
I don't know. Okay, I always get it wrong. I just think it's called Vinegar Strokes.
It's Mondo Vision. There you go.
Mondo Vision. Yeah.
And yes, I can buy it for $40. That's unfortunate.
That's a little much, yeah.
That's a tad much for a film with a woman fucking a squid.
Or maybe it's not enough, Chris. Maybe it's not enough.
We could just watch Kuso and pretty much get the same thing.
You should see the... I think there's a cut-down version of it. I think it's... I can't remember what it's called, if it's still called Possession, but we definitely talked about that when we talked about it on the podcast. It's amazingly even more incoherent than the regular version.
Yeah, there are some scenes in Possession that, like, thinking about it now, I'm still like, oh dear God.
Still have a boner for that squid monster?
I have a boner for the scene when she's in the underground of the subway.
Almost. Yeah.
God.
Oh yeah, when she throws that absolute shit fit in the subway, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Or when, like, the squid jizz is coming out of her mouth.
Oh,
that is a scene in that movie, right?
It is.
Okay, I'm just making sure it wasn't something else I watched. Thank you, Jess. I'm sorry. I do watch a lot of stuff. Sometimes I have a hard time.
Watch a lot of hentai.
Tentacle porn finds its way to the Plex server.
Filed under, hey, you know what? I have said it before and I'll say it again. There was a time where I thought about just putting, like, some sort of horrible vor porn on my Plex server under just, like, a random movie and hoping one day someone would watch it and then text me and be like, what am I fucking watching? Oh, I don't know. It just happened to make its way onto the Plex server. Whatever. Oh, God.
Didn't you ask me to download this? I don't understand.
Yeah, is this what you guys wanted? This is not Anaconda, Blood Orchid? What?
That one is really awful.
Yeah, well, oh, God. So, let's take one final break, and we'll play the preview for the next Culture Cast. That's right, in the next Culture Cast, we're finally talking about it. The film that I have mentioned more times than even the movies we've been talking about. We're talking about Dead Man's Letters. And we have an interview with Konstantin Lubashansky that Mike did with a translator. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike was like, I'm doing this. And I was like, okay, good. I would never turn down an interview with a filmmaker.
I keep wondering, this is possibly off the record, I keep wondering how I should edit that together. If I should do, like, the NPR thing where you start to hear him speak and then you put the translator over it, or if I just play it as it was and have him speaking and then have the translator. And I love when he would be done, he would just be like, translate, please.
That's actually what he would say?
What's that?
That's actually what he would say?
Yeah.
That's great.
Because he knows English, but
Sure.
he just doesn't feel confident in it. So... And then there were times where he like listed off all these filmmakers, and she'd be like, he studied with. Well, you heard the list, and I'm like, okay,
I know, yeah, Tarkovsky. Oh yeah, him.
yeah. But she like a few other people that he'd studied with too. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Where can people find you, Mr. Mike White? Until then,
You can find me over at the Bernie Miller podcast with the life and times of Captain Bernie Miller. Coming up on our second episode. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Second episode of many.
Yes. Second episode of 5 years worth of episodes. So get ready.
We're doing this
happening.
until the end.
And we're not even through the first year of Twilight Zone 85, which I think we're now like talking about Twilight Zone 86, actually.
I think so.
Talked about the Christmas episode recently, so got to hear all about that. And that's available over at Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 1985 podcast. And then I do something called The Projection Booth every week on projectionboothpodcast.com.
Yeah, just that last one, huh?
Whatever.
No biggie. Entertainment Weekly, no big.
Yeah. 9 years, it's okay. It's no Kolchak tapes.
Dude, 9 years, though. Come on, man. That's insane.
Like this, it's as long as podcasting has been popular.
Is it? It kind of is.
I think it is. Yeah, I don't think I'm entirely wrong in saying that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I remember listening to Film Spotting when I was in high school. And 10 years ago, I guess maybe you were like right at that cusp where people started knowing what podcasting was.
Mm-hmm.
I was, following on Outside the Cinema's coattails. In fact, I'm the guy that burns the coattails and then pisses on them.
You mean you haven't been able to get Adam Kempenar and Sam Holgren on your podcast yet?
I don't know who these people are.
Those are the dudes from Film Spotting who are a little too big for their britches now, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. No, I did reach out to them, and they basically were like, fuck you.
Fuck you. I'm eating, and we don't need your ad revenue. Underling.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Pete from Slash Film kind of was like, yeah, sure, I'll do some. No, never mind.
Oh, who?
The guy from Slash Film.
Oh,
Oh,
Scaretta?
wow.
Yeah, and then Katrina Longworth from You Must Remember This was just like, oh, no, I'm too busy. I'm like, well, I'm talking about, like, next year. No, I'm still too busy. So.
You know that weekend next year? Yep, and then whatever.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, I'm sorry. I already have plans. Ryan and I are going to the premiere of Knives Out 2. Sorry.
Wait, is that Ryan Johnson's girlfriend?
Wife now, I think.
Oh.
And I wondered how she got so popular.
I
Got
mean,
him.
she spends like one season on one fucking thing. It just
Yeah.
takes forever to get anywhere.
All those Last Jedi apologists are rallying around her podcast, guys.
Big fans
Join
of classic
us, won't
cinema,
you?
I'm sure.
Big fans of Knives Out, an original
Big fans
screenplay.
of 30s and 40s era Hollywood crime. Now, I'm a big fan of that. I do actually like her show.
Huge fans of bad Judy Garland impersonations.
Got him. Where can people find you, Jess?
You can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard, and you can also find me on this podcast twice a month. You can find me on our podcast, Chris, the one season show where we talk about TV shows that only lasted one season, and we are about to finish up Kitchen Confidential. So that actually is going to put a cap on our second season.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys have talked about Kitchen Confidential longer than it was on the air.
It was on the air for 3 weeks. It was on the air for a whopping 3 weeks.
We talked about it for like 4 months.
Yeah. And yet somehow we couldn't land Bradley Cooper. Weird. You
No.
busy?
I don't get it.
Can't figure it out. And yeah, eventually, so I'm about to be going into production on a feature that I co-wrote. So eventually, that will be hopefully coming out. But
pretty soon, you'll be too big for your britches. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no. That weekend,
I can't be
I'm
on the projection
shooting.
booth. I'm just no. They're mean to me.
No. I'm gonna text Jess and she'll be like, "Sorry, this has to go to my manager now."
Yeah, you have to talk to my agent.
Shit, never mind.
I have a publicist for that.
My agent is just my cat.
It's really inappropriate that you're writing to me right now.
Someday I hope to turn people down when they ask me to be on their podcast. That's my goal.
Just,
right?
I mean, you can.
I wouldn't do that. I'm not a dick. I'm a dick, but I'm not that kind of dick. I'm not a dickhead. Speaking of projects that I am part of, you guys have pretty much already mentioned all of them except for Chronicles from the Crypt, which is a podcast that I do with Father Malone, who I would say is like the missing part of this quartet of crime and insanity that I call my podcasting life.
He fills in your other podcasts because, Mike, you're on the Twilight Zone and Barney Miller.
Yes,
I've got
true.
this one and one season. Yep, he is.
He's really just he's a great guy. And Chronicles from the Crypt is a great podcast about a show that isn't so great, apparently, as we're finding out the more we watch Tales from the Crypt. So that's a bummer. But you can find that at Chronicles from the Crypt. Patreon.com/CultureCast is where you can find out more about how you can support this podcast, if that's a thing you're into. If not, I totally get it. And big thanks, as always, to Tiger Blood Jewel for the Bayou, and we'll catch you on the next episode.